Adjust my video settings here 1 second. I think I'm good to go here. Looks like we are live. Just double checking that the streams are working. It's time to get started, but want to make sure it's working. Can everybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? I don't even know who's connected. So today I'm going to be coding. I'm going to add a feature. If you joined me 2 weeks ago, I talked about it a little bit. Last week I was on holiday, so that's why I didn't stream last week. So this week, I'm going to be doing some live coding. I'm going to try to add a feature to my open source library. So, just gathering my thoughts here in my windows. All right, people can hear me. That is great. Yes, it is recorded on YouTube also. If you go to youtube.com/@boldlygo, that's my channel, and you can watch this live right now, or the replay will be available there as well. All right. So first off, let's talk about the feature I'm going to be adding. Let me pull up a web browser with the issue. Give everybody some context. And so here's the issue. It's been a long-standing issue. I opened it back in 2019, and I had a lot of preliminary work that had to be done. Some of it took several months of doing other things mostly, but some certain amount of re-engineering of the API. You can see all those points are done except the last one. So the last one is what I'm going to work on today. To make it clear what that means, let me look at the and show you the CouchDB documentation that's relevant to this feature I want to add. Okay, so I think it's here. I think this is where it is. Yeah, so this is the particular feature I want to add support for. So if you're not familiar with CouchDB, it's a document store. It's very similar to MongoDB. So if you know MongoDB, it should translate mentally very easily. But there's this particular feature when you fetch a document in CouchDB, you optionally can specify open revs, which you give it a list of revisions of that document, and then it or all, and then it returns those revisions. So this is a case where you might get multiple copies of a single document when you fetch a single document. And that was not possible before. It's not possible with Kivik, my open source library. This feature is used primarily for the replication protocol in CouchDB. And so I want to add the capability to use this feature to my library so that my library can be used for full replications. So essentially what I need to do is modify my Go code to detect this well, I have two options, two ways to do this. Let me close the window. I need to modify my code to work properly when this option is specified. Now, there's two ways I can think of to do that. One is to detect that this option is specified. That's probably not the one I'll do. The other is to detect when the return value from the API contains multiple documents and do the right thing. Now, I don't know which I'm going to do. I'll probably do the latter one, but before I'm jumping ahead of myself, I'm going to look at the code and I'm going to start making the changes necessary. So let's, or I'll start by making some tests probably, and then the changes. Oops. So let me, so the CouchDB driver lives in one repository called CouchDB. That's where I am right now. That's where all these changes that we're making today should happen, I think. As I mentioned last week, the Kivik architecture uses an architecture similar to that done by or done with the SQL driver interface in the Cider library, which is so you have the SQL package, database SQL, and then you have the driver. And there are multiple implementations of a driver, so you can use MySQL or Postgres, whatever. I do the same here. So Kivik is the analog to SQL, and then CouchDB is the analog to your Postgres or MySQL or SQLite driver. And that's where I need to make the changes. I've already made the changes necessary in Kivik, in the front end part. That was with the other check marks we saw on the issue. Now I'm going to make the back end changes. Let's see what file that function is stored in. I think it's just db here. Yeah, I see it there. So this is the function that needs to be modified. And it already supports a couple of different return types that it detects. So it just detects what value or what format is returned by the REST API and behaves accordingly. So that's probably what I'll do here too. Oh, good. I have a spammer on my live stream. I love that. Give me 1 second to block this spammer, and I'll be right back. For those of you who aren't watching YouTube, somebody's trying to sell me their SEO services. All right, they're gone. Sorry about that. I've gotten a lot of spam comments on my YouTube channel, never during a live stream. So that was interesting. All right, so the first thing I want to do is add a test, which of course won't work, but that's the idea. It will help me know what changes need to be made. Usually I like to keep my tests in a separate window, but when I'm zoomed in this much, I think I won't do that right now. By the way, thanks to everybody who watched 2 weeks ago. I got a lot of feedback about the angled background I had behind me and how it was distracting. So that's gone, as you can see. Hopefully that makes it easier to follow along here. All right, so here's the function, or the test for the function. So I'm going to add a test case that adds the parameter. And I don't actually know what it's going to do, if it's going to crash or what, but we'll see. Come down to the end here. All right. I remember what that thing is called. Open revs, I think. Find the right. Too many tabs. Here we go. Open revs. So I'm going to name my test accordingly. I'm just copying kind of the one up here. So I don't actually want to copy this particular one. I want to copy one that returns an actual body. So basically just to explain what this does, new custom DB creates sort of a mock database instance that doesn't actually make a network request. It just puts this function in place of the HTTP transport. So it just sort of dynamically generates a fake, or it's not really fake, it's a real HTTP response, but without making a network request. I'm going to fill in the details of this response later. I know it's probably gonna give a nil pointer reference if I do that. So I have a question here. Someone says I haven't looked at Kivik before. Is it meant to be used similarly to the MongoDB driver instead of importing it and then issuing queries via the SQL standard library? So it doesn't actually interface with the SQL standard library at all. But basically, you would use this library if you want to talk to CouchDB. So it's sort of like the CouchDB SDK or driver for Go. Whereas if you're using Mongo, you use, I don't remember what the import path is, but the one from MongoDB. Does that answer the question, I hope? If not, let me know and I can clarify. So now I need to specify what I expect the response to be. And I don't know what it's going to be yet because I haven't looked at the response, but I'm going to put something here. Something that I'll fill in later. So you can see it's a JSON document, so that's what I'm putting there. Now when I run this, I think it's going to crash right now, but let's see. Okay, so it didn't crash, but it does something. Yeah, it doesn't pass. I'm confused by this, but that's irrelevant to my work today. It looks like I have a test that's running when it shouldn't be. It's trying to connect to a live database. I'll worry about that later. So what I need to do now is I need to populate the response with something meaningful. So to do that, I want to talk to a live CouchDB, so I'm going to start one in Docker. I have too many Docker things running. Let me shut those down here in my other window. That's from one of my other projects. All right, that's more like it. So I have some scripts here to bring up CouchDB in Docker. So let's have a look at that. So I'll set one of these. Actually, maybe I already have that set. That's probably why that live test was running. Let me check here. Yeah, so I have the environment variable for Couch 3.0 set. That's why the live test was trying to run and failing. Oh, that's good enough. But let's just run that one since I already have that set. Let me try to start that. Just copy the one I want here. Make sure I have the right Docker image. export username and password. So I'm pulling down the CouchDB 3.0 image. That's done. Export CouchDB user and CouchDB password, which are sort of magical environment variables that are used by the Docker image to set the admin user and password. Obviously, these aren't real passwords and credentials that I use. I just use these for testing. I hope nobody's using those actual credentials anywhere, except for testing. And then I want to run this command here. So this script, you can see, starts a bunch of different versions of CouchDB, version 2.2, 2.3, all the way up to 3.3, so that I can run tests against those all simultaneously. But I don't want to run tests on all of them right now. I just want to test against one particular version. In fact, I'm not even testing right now. I'm just, well, I guess I am testing. I'm exploring. I want to see what output it gives me. Unable to find image. Did I typo it? Looks like it's there's a typo. Can I download this? Apparently not. No. I need to fix that script here while I'm at it. Let's try it that way. Actually, you know what? I bet the problem is, I'll bet that 3.0.0 has been superseded by a newer version. Let me check. Maybe I'll just use 3.3. But I'm sure there's at least a 3.0.1 or something like that. Looks like 3.0 is completely deprecated, so I'll jump up to 3. I'll use the latest one, 3.3.2. No, I'll just do this one. Edit my bash RC because I had it setting a different one. What port does that get started on? 6007. Alright, that worked. And then I need to run complete touch threat. So this script that I'm running now does final setup on the running database. So now we have CouchDB running version 3.3.2 running locally in Docker. So now I can query it and find out what I need to replicate in my tests. Just do this, I should get a basic response back that just gives information about the database, and indeed I do. Now, before I can query a document, I need to create one, so let's do that. First, I need to create a database. Let's call it foo. And then a document within the database. Let's call it bar. Why not? Now, if I do this, I'm gonna just do a put request to this URL. Foo is the database name. Bar is the document name. I think I can do it with no content, and it will create an empty document for me. But I might be wrong. Let's see. Yeah, it requires a body. So I'm pretty sure I can give it an empty body though. Now that worked. Okay. Now I can get that. $7. So there's my document. It has 2 keys in it. The first is the ID, which is very similar to Mongo if you're familiar, and the revision. Now let me make an update to that. Let's add a foo. Now this is going to fail because the document already exists, so there's a conflict. So I need to include the original rev so that it considers it a valid update. I think that'll work. Yes, that works. So now if I fetch the document again, I have the new version that has my foo key. Now let's try this again with the argument that we're trying to test against, and that is open revs. Oops. So now I get a different response. I get a content type, or I get a, let me do a verbose here. Should be more clear. So I get multi-part mixed, as expected, and then I get chunks. There's only one chunk in there, but I get, and it has that particular document. So anyway, this is what I want my test to return to my library. So I can hopefully copy and paste this carefully into my test. Let me close the script. I'm done with that for now. I'm trying to see how I want to. Oh yeah, I was looking if I had a helper function, and I do. It's called body. It creates a body for me. I think that's what I want. I don't want all these tabs though. Let me get rid of that. Probably need a new line at the end here. I'm not certain if that's required, but it seems like a nice idea. Should be okay, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check. Status okay? Yes. That should be status code, I think, right? Yeah, okay. Header. Let's add the necessary headers here. The only one I think I care about is content type. I think the others are pretty well ignored. Content type is important for two reasons in this case. One, I need to know that it's multi-part mixed. That's the clue that I need to treat this response differently than if it's JSON. And second, that boundary is actually quite essential to parse the rest of it. I think that's the only thing I need in here. If I discover that I need something else, I'll add it. But let's try running this test again. It's still going to fail, but it should fail differently now. So I still get the same sort of response, an unexpected error. I got it. Oh, see it. Okay, so I got an error that a doc ID is required, which I forgot to provide. So let me provide that. So we're not actually executing anything useful in this code yet. Let me put an ID in there. Because I need to tell the driver which document to fetch. I'm not doing that, so it's failing before it even makes the fake network request. The ID is bar. Now let's see how it fails. Unable to determine document revision. Okay, that's not unsurprising. So what I happen to know what that means because I wrote this code. But it's trying to extract the document ID from this body, believing that it is, well, I don't know what it believes it is. It's using, I'm confused what it thinks it is actually. Because we don't have either expected content type. I would have expected it to return this error, come to think of it. Why isn't it? Because the content type is multi-part mixed, and this is multi-part related. So you can request a document that has binary attachments to treat those attachments as separate parts of a multi-part related document. That's what this is for, but that's unrelated to what we're doing here. So I would expect it to see this content type of multi-part mixed, and it's not this, it's not this. It should come to the default case and return this error, but it's not doing that. It seems to be returning here, which confuses me. Unable to determine document revision. So the reason it does this, normally the document revision is included in the headers, but that's not possible in this particular case because we're returning multiple revisions. So it doesn't find the revision in the header. It instead has to find that somewhere else. When it falls back to that somewhere else, it just tries to parse the JSON document. However, that shouldn't be happening because it's not a JSON document. It shouldn't be triggering this case. So I'm actually confused what's happening. I'm going to rerun the test, but only that specific test. And then I'm going to add a panic here to see if this is what's happening. So that's not triggering. Shouldn't call it JSON. I'll just say here. It's acting as though it's not doing any of those things. Okay, so it's happening here. This is what's failing. I determined that by deduction. I should actually prove it. Put that, let me finish what I started here, put that panic here. Yeah, okay. So this function is failing. And so somewhere along these lines, it's trying to read the, here, this is where it's trying to read the revision and failing. Okay. Yeah, panic is often faster than the debugger, yes. So basically this function here is trying to extract the revision as I was describing. So here's the actual error, or it's repeated here. This is probably the one that's actually triggering. But I don't want to even be calling this at all in this case. I'm wondering if I need to change this except to include multi-part mixed. Let's see what, let's just do a little debugging here. Just dump the response header and see what we get. So we are getting multi-part mixed regardless of the accept header. So that's, well, of course we are, because I'm hard coding that. I'm curious now though if the server would respond, how the server would respond to that. So I'm going to test that. Civic test ESN couch 33. Okay, now I'm going to add argument open revs. So it still responds with the correct type. It doesn't strictly adhere to the accept header, which is what it should be doing. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to break my communication by not specifically mentioning multi-part. Oh wait, I did it wrong. I wanted to put multi-part related here, not mixed. Oh. So it does honor that. So when I don't specify multi-part mixed, it just returns a single revision. So I need to I do need to be careful about that actually. Actually, it returns that's interesting. It returns an array. Okay. So I have to decide if I care about both of those. But I think for now, what I'll do is I'm going to modify this test a little bit. First, I'll modify the test now. Test driven, right? Test driven development. So I want to check that the accept header is what I expect. Multi-part mixed, multi-part related application JSON. Did I do a single quote there? What have I been doing, JavaScript lately or something? I haven't been, but it seems to be what my brain thinks. All right, if got equals rec.header.get accept. All right, so now my test should fail with this particular error message. And it does. So I'm getting multi-part related application JSON, but I want to include multi-part mixed in there, so that's easy to fix. I need to just change this line here. I should be back to my old failure. Great. So I part way there. I have used ChatGPT a couple of times on this stream when I get a particular question, but generally I don't use it very much, honestly. I was using it a lot when I was doing PHP a few months ago. I was working on a PHP project, which I haven't used PHP since like version 4 in 2007 maybe, or 2008. I don't know. It was a long time ago. So I was trying to refactor PHP without understanding a lot of the nuances. So ChatGPT helped a lot there. But I don't use it nearly as much for Go. Just I don't feel the need usually. All right, so now I need to figure out how I'm going to handle this. I think actually well, so basically I shouldn't actually be returning the revision at all in this particular case. So I think maybe this function needs to be modified. Get rid of this debug line I created. I think I want this function to no longer, so it's return, or now it returns an HTTP response, the revision, and a possible error. I think I want to modify this function to not return the revision because the revision isn't necessarily known anymore. I want to see where this is called from. I think it's called from two places. Get rev and get, okay. So I think that's the refactoring I want to do. I want to change this to not return the revision, and then I will have get rev and possibly get call that logic for me. So let me do that. I think I'm going to do this as a separate commit though. So keep forgetting the name of this option I'm adding, OpenRevs. I'm just going to commit this as a work in progress. I'm going to create a new branch to do this refactor since it can be done easily standalone without this, and then it won't. And then I can merge that and rebase this, and it will be done and out of my mind. All right, so I'm going to change this to no longer return a revision. So I have to change all these returns. Soon I won't have to return quote quote when I'm returning an empty string, because the nil or the untyped 0 proposal has been accepted and will probably be included in Go version 1.22. So in 6 months, this will look like this instead. Won't that be nice? People like that? All right, so that is actually I'm going to just all right, so that function is done, but now its two callers are broken. Oops, I copied the wrong thing there. I'm going to get rid of these named return values. They aren't necessary. And then I don't have the reason I don't like that is because now I have to do this, and I prefer to define those when they're there. I would keep the named returns if I had multiple, say, strings in the same signature, because it's confusing. It can serve as documentation there, but it's not necessary in this case. The function is called getRev. It should be obvious what the return value is. It's a rev. All right, so I should have one more place I need to fix this. Trying to find the other one so I can just copy this. There we go. All right, so this should have been a pure refactoring. The code should work identically as before. It's a little more verbose now, which on its own is going to look silly because this part is duplicated now. But let's run the test suite and see. Okay, I have some failures because of my duplicate database. It's running against the database I created, and it didn't expect to see that database called foo. That's okay. I'm going to push this to GitHub, and it'll run in my CI pipeline, and that will be the final verification. All right, so let's head over to GitHub. This will probably take a few minutes because it's a fairly extensive test suite. It starts up 4 or 5 different versions of CouchDB in the background against 5 or 6 different versions of Go. Most of them run concurrently, but it still takes a few minutes. So, and then sometimes you have to wait for the webhook to trigger. So it'll be a few minutes before that's done. Meanwhile, I'm going to trust that it's done, and I'm going to go back to my work in progress. I'll just rebase this work on top of that refactor. And we can continue trusting that it will work. And if it doesn't, then we'll go back and address it. Let's find the right window again. I always have too many windows open. Okay. So now we should have the same failure as before. Let's just run that test again and be certain. If I can find the right one. Here we go. All right, unable to determine. Exactly. It's just now happening at a different place in the call chain. Now it's happening here. So what I want to do then is I want to move this want to make this happen somewhere else. Now, the interesting thing about this is so this particular function is only ever going to work. Well, I should say this function, the extract rev part. This is the part that partially unmarshals the document until it finds the revision and then reassembles it so that it's whole again. This part will only ever work in the type JSON example. So I can actually do a further sort of optimization here. Maybe I'll do that in the previous branch, actually, since it's kind of related to that. Yeah, I think I will. Do a separate commit, but I'll keep it in the same branch. So I'm gonna move this function call into this branch of the switch statement. And for this one with type MP related, I am going to it's not, there's a possibility of a bug. Let me verify this. And so if we ever have a situation where the server returns a multi-part related document that does not contain the E-tag is what has the revision in it, then this particular branch of the switch could break. I don't know if that would ever actually happen. I'm going to assume not, since that for the moment, if I ever get a bug report, then I'll fix it. But I'm going to assume that the E-tag is always present in this case, since that's the only code path that would ever have worked in the first place. And just do it like this. And I'm going to ignore the not okay case. So what I've done now is I only call getRev, which tries the E-tag first, and if it fails, then it tries partial JSON unmarshalling. I only do that when the content type is JSON. In the case when it's multi-part related, I just check the E-tag. And in the future, if I get a bug report, I will make this smart enough to do the partial JSON unmarshalling on the multi-part related thing. Good to leave a comment, future self. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, so that's good enough for now. Someday, if I remember and I feel like ambitious, I'll try to break that. But for now, I'll wait. Otherwise, I'll wait till I get a bug report. I'm going to check the details on this, make sure it looks like it's working. So the linter passed, the coverage test passed, and all the individual Go versions are still running, but I expect them to pass too. Oh yeah, 17 and 18 have passed, RC has passed, the others will too. So I don't mind pushing up that new change that will re-trigger CI. Meanwhile, back to where I was before, assuming it's all going to work. Go back to this branch and rebase again. All right, so now the error should be different. Because we're no longer calling that getRev function. So now I'll probably get I don't know, I might get a crash or something, but it should be different in any case. All right, Now I'm getting this error as expected. Great. So I need to add a case for that type. And now here's where all the fun logic is going to go. So now if I do this, it's going to return nil or something. Yeah, missing return. Yeah, of course. All right, so I need to, I know what I need to do. I need to return you know what? I don't think this will work. I think I need to make a change to, I need to make a change to the driver layer, which is in a different repository. This is a bigger change than I was anticipating, but I have one small piece of that remaining. I'm gonna leave this here. What did I do wrong? Just add that to my whip thing. And let's go to the other repository. I'll explain what needs to happen here in just a second. Why I need to make this change in a different repository. All right, so this is the sort of front end of the database driver where I define this driver abstraction. This is similar to SQL, database SQL driver in the center library, if you've looked at that. And right now, the function I care about, where is it? Is here. So this is the database interface, the DB interface, and it has this function on it. This is the function that you probably recall I was editing in the window right here. The problem is it returns a single document right now, but I need it to return a result set. I guess it's called rows. It's a silly name, but for legacy reasons. It needs to return a rows, which is an interface like this. And a rows or result set can contain 0 or more documents. In the common case, it will be a result set that contains a single document. But in some cases, of course, when passing this open revs thing, it could be multiple documents. So that's what I need to change here. I have a couple different ways I can do this. The quote simple way is to just change this, right? Boom, done. Except now I've broken the 5 drivers I have that all implement the old interface. So I'm going to be a little more careful than that. I could do that. I totally could do that. None of these drivers are a stable API. They're all advertised as could break any moment. So I could do that, but I'm going to be a little more careful, and we'll just assume, or we'll sort of pretend that this is real live code that shouldn't be breaking. So I have what I need to do now is make it possible that my database implementation supports either this version or the new one. I think that, and that'll be a transitionary state, and then I'll delete the old one eventually. So I think what I'm going to do, so I could either make 2 versions of this interface. One that might be the easiest approach, actually. So that would just look like this. I take this whole database interface and copy it and call it new and change this to rows. Actually, a better way to do that is to rename this one to old. Let me do that. And I can rename this one to just DB. We can see the different changes that have happened here. So you can see a few places in the code where it referenced driver.db and now references these other things. I'm not sure if I like this though, because now I have to go in every place. I don't like this. I know that I don't. I'm going to undo this. Because I have to go every place where I set that value, I have to set it to one of two different values. Now I can do that with generics, but this code still supports Go 1.17, which doesn't support generics, so that's not really a good option anyway. I'm going to do a different approach. And that will be to add an optional interface. It doesn't matter what I call it, it's temporary, but I'm going to add an interface that has just the new method on it. Let's call it rows getter. Why not? I'm going to here's the, well, let me write the doc and then I'll explain the problem with this. So the problem with this is that a single implementation cannot implement this and this. So this cannot be a this rows getter cannot be a superset of DB. I have to rename either this or this. If I rename this, it breaks backward compatibility. If I rename this, it makes forward compatibility harder. So the other option, and I think this is what I'm going to do, is to extract this entirely into two sub-interfaces. I think this approach will work. Now it's going to break immediately because I have at least one place here. Yeah, right here. So this is the public-facing get method. It tries to call the underlying get method on the driver DB value, and it can't because it's no longer part of the interface. So here's where I have to pick which one to do. So I will do rows getter. Okay. So let me do a switch statement. That's easier. This panic should never actually happen. It should be impossible. And it will go away soon anyway. Okay, so now I should have, I think, no, in this case, let me turn, I'll do a panic here also. So I'll be fixing that in just a moment. So I should have functionally identical code now. Let me look at the diff. So in the past, I just assumed that db.driver db had the get method on it. Now I check to see if it has the old getter, which would be in the old code, or what I'll implement soon, the new code, which nothing implements right now, so it's never executed. Yeah, interface smuggling. I like that name. Someone commented you could also do the interface smuggling pattern, which is I've never heard that term, but I think it's a good description of what I'm doing here. So we have a value of type DB, which by convention is guaranteed to have one of these interfaces also. With generics, I could be a little more strict about that, but again, that's not an option for this library, not yet. I think it should be working. Let me run the tests. Yeah, so the tests are passing. We just have a couple bits of code that never execute right now. So this line is never executed, and this line is never executed, and this particular interface is never implemented yet. But let's commit this. Now I'm going to modify this case to work. And it should be pretty straightforward because I already have other places that return rows. Here's an example right here. So if I have one of those, it's just a matter of basically returning this. So let's do that. So this is a lot of nuance going on here. So I need to start query. So I need to copy a bunch of this logic. I'm going to just put a bunch of blank lines here, make it easier. So I'm going to copy the entire body of this function into here and then delete the parts I don't need. So what this function does, query, is this is like doing a multi-query in SQL or something like that. Select star from or whatever. This is where you can query arbitrary things and get an arbitrary number of returns. Don't need to check that. I'm already doing that. So I need to start the query. I'm already doing that up there, so I don't need to do that. That's great. What that's for is tracking open queries so that to block if you try to close the parent connection or whatever. Details that probably don't really matter right now. vdoc and view don't matter here. So I want this to be getter.get. And then the argument should be the same as here actually. So let me actually this. The only difference is the return type of that, of the type of the first return value. So this should be fine. I need to check this in query. What? Okay, so this will need to change. In this case, I can defer immediately. In this case, I can't. So, as I was saying, this end query thing it basically creates a lock on the parent connection, parent object. So the parent object can't be closed while the query is in progress. Now that I'm returning an iterator, I need to not end the query as soon as this function returns. In the case of rosegetter, in that case, I trust the iterator to close the query when it happens. So that's why I moved this defer down here to this case. I think this is done. To be certain, I need to write a test for it, though. I should have done that first, of course, but got ahead of myself. Test get. So let's add a test case here. Let me copy this example. This is a successful example. Copy that down here and then make modifications. So this returns a driver document, but I don't want it to. I want it to return. Okay, I need to modify my mock. So I have a custom mocks system here. It's not really mocks. That's a bad name. It should just be like doubles or something. So you can see it's just a struct where each function on the interface has a field of the same name followed by the word func, and then it is of type function. So I could easily just double all these out. But this only doubles as the old version. I need one that does the new one. So I'm going to do it like this. This is temporary until all of the backend drivers are updated. So this won't be long-living code. Let's do what I call the new one, rows getter. I'm going to embed the DB type here, and then I'm going to create my own get func that overrides the embedded one, and give it the new return type. All right, so now in my test, rather than doing mock.db, I want rows getter. And now this needs to return driver.rows. And now I need to change this return type. Let me find an example where I've done that before. I can just copy from it. Find a success example here. Oh, I just have a mock rows thing. That makes it easy. I can return that. So that should be a good enough test. Let's see if it works. Nope. Awesome. Where is it failing? It's failing in mock db.go line 58. Oh, I think I know why. Oh, I definitely know why. Where did my test go? What? A lot of tests here. Oh, I'm in the wrong file. No wonder I'm not finding it. I was in the CouchDB repo instead of this one. Okay, the problem is I forgot to implement this method. Let me copy that implementation to the new type. I think that should fix the test, or at least that particular failure. Oh, I have a bunch of debug output that I forgot to clean up from a previous job, it looks like, but unexpected error, no results, 404. Which I'm not sure if that is the doc ID. No, it's not. I think I'm going to clean up this debug out because that's annoying. Same as before. Get a whip. Let me find some of these pre-start. Yep, obvious debug output. It's been sitting around for who knows how long. See if there's any of that still around. No, that looks good. Push that up and get that merged. Let's check the status of the CI here on the other one. It looks like it's good. Code coverage dropped by 0.15%, but I don't care about that. So I'm going to go ahead and merge this to do that refactoring on the other repo. Meanwhile, let's head over here and get this debug cleanup PR merged. I like to do PRs on my open source code just because it leaves a nice audit trail for anybody wanting to watch, not because of anybody official caring about it. I just think it makes for a nice clean project. And of course I do have occasional contributors to this project, and they use pull requests too, so yeah. All right. Rebase this on top of the cleanup, so I don't have that annoying debug output while I'm debugging this. Let's go back to seeing what's going on here. So this seems to want a document. I guess I need to duplicate a result set that actually returns documents. That one apparently didn't. Let me find an example of how I did that. Surely there's one in here. Well, there's not one in that particular file. Let's try, maybe this one in this file. Yeah, there's several other uses of this here. You know, I don't really need to do a full test because I know that the iterator works because I'm using it everywhere else. So I just need to make sure that I'm returning a valid iterator. That's really all I need to be testing for. So the question on chat is, why would I mock away the database and not use test containers plus actual DB running in Docker? I do that, but I do that from integration tests. Integration tests are great, but they don't necessarily point out to where the failure is. So for this particular test, I want a unit test. I want to test that this function and this function alone is working. That's kind of the definition of a unit test, right? So for this particular test, I don't want a database. I don't want to be calling a real driver. I don't want any of that. I just want to test this function. And that gets back to what I was just starting to actually realize and say, that I don't need to test the iterator. I just need to test that a valid iterator is being returned, because I've already extensively tested the iterator logic. You saw I copied and pasted this code from another function. I know that that code works. I just need to ensure that when this function is called under the right circumstances, it returns an iterator. So I probably don't actually need to make this return a document with ID foo as the current assertion expects. Instead, I just need to verify that it's returning a valid iterator. So that's what I'm going to work on doing here. So Let me compare that to this one here. So actually, it's doing what it should be doing. So if I return a valid iterator with no document in it, which is what's happening now, it should return a 400. Because that, so if I, let's say I try to fetch a document that doesn't exist, I would return a valid iterator with 0 documents and should return a 404. So it's doing the right thing. I just need to change my expectations here. I just put XXX as a placeholder until I know what the actual error string is. Unexpected doc ID. That is not the expected error at all. Didn't I get a 404 before? Yeah. Okay, I'm confused. Oh. Commented out too much stuff. Okay, now it's doing what I want. There's still one thing I need to change though. And that is I want to test, well, actually I don't know if I care about that. I probably don't. What I was going to say is I want to test that the option is being passed properly. But I don't care about that. The option to the driver, the open revs option. But I don't really care about that. What I care about is, yeah, all I care about is that when the driver implements the rows getter rather than the old getter, does it return a working iterator? And I've proven now that it does, right? Now, since I wrote my test after my code, I'm going to comment out this code, put that panic back in, and see what happens. It fails. So now my test is now I'm back to this is the sort of post hoc TDD. I wrote my code, then my test. To make sure that my test is valid, I intentionally disable the working code, prove that my test fails, and now I'll re-enable that code. All right, I'm happy. So now I'm looking at my full diff of this change. The actual change is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of copied and pasted code. 7 lines of copied and pasted code, plus a dozen lines, 2 dozen lines or so of tests. All right, so the debugging output PR is past the test, so I'll merge that. Rebase this on top of master again. And I will push that and create a PR to make my actual change to the main package. Right. Now we need to merge this. It'll take a few minutes for that to run. Oh, I love this question. What percentage of test coverage do you consider good enough? I almost completely ignore test coverage percentage. It's an almost meaningless number. Now you saw that I have a code coverage tool running on my pull requests here. So I'll get back to that, but it's incredibly easy, either intentionally or accidentally, to create tests that inflate your percentage, your coverage percentage, without actually testing anything. I've seen this happen a lot. I've done it myself accidentally. I have a function that calls, a test function that calls a function, and my assertion is wrong or broken or whatever. So I'm executing the code, but the assertion is meaningless, and so it's not actually testing anything. So you can very easily get 98% test coverage while you're really only testing 10% of your code or something like that. That's trivially easy to do by accident. It's even easier if you try. And if you think who would ever try, just start paying people to improve their test coverage percentage, and they will try. I've heard of documented cases of this. So I really don't give much credibility at all to test coverage. Further, you can have a really high test coverage, it's actually testing things, but maybe your assertions really aren't very useful, or your codes, your tests are very brittle or very complicated, full of extra mocks and stuff like that. So you can actually have a lot of code that maybe even is being tested, but in a very poor way. So I don't really give much credit to test coverage at all. Having said that, if I'm doing an interview, if I'm reviewing a candidate for a job application, for example, and they send me a code sample, I do check to see the test coverage on their project, but I don't have a target in mind. Mainly what I'm looking for is there any test coverage at all? Did they bother writing tests? Now, if the test coverage is like 2%, that kind of tells me they probably didn't really try. So, I don't have a target number in mind, but probably in the 30 to 70% number would be good. But then I, of course, want to go look at those tests and see what they look like. Are they actually good tests? Are they using too many mocks, or are they too abstract, or whatever? Now, when I'm writing code, so back to why I have a test coverage thing in my CI, the one place where I like test coverage numbers is on a per pull request or per change basis, because that can be a quick indicator that I've made a stupid mistake. I have had changes in the past. I've been coding for many years, and I have had times when I made a very simple accidental change that disabled hundreds of tests, for example. Maybe I made a typo, or I renamed a function and it's no longer being called or something. This happens more in dynamic languages than in something compiled like Go. But I've had a case. I remember a case on a Perl project many years ago where I made a very subtle change. I think I renamed a function, and it was no longer being called in the test. But it didn't cause the test to break because of the dynamic nature of the language. So the test suite passed, but when I looked at the test coverage percentage, dropped by like 20% for a 2-line change or something like that. Obviously a mistake. So that's the one place that I like test coverage percentage, is on a per change or per pull request basis, just as a very brief smoke screen test to tell me if I've made a stupid mistake. That's why when you saw me look at that other one earlier, it dropped by 0.15%. I didn't care. That's probably 1 line or 2 lines of code. So here you can see on this one, test coverage dropped by 0.31%. We could look at the details, but I don't really care. I added an extra branch. So I added a default case that panics that should never happen. That's probably what's not being covered here. Let's see if I can pull it up and confirm that. I don't know if I can even log into this right now. Not even logged in. I'm not going to bother with that, but it's probably just that one line. In fact, we can probably see it in my IDE. If I resave this and run the test. So this line is not covered. That's probably what triggering it. Oh, so this line also isn't covered. So if I wanted to be thorough about my tests, I would add another test that returns an error. So why don't I do that, just for good measure? Is that an OpenRevs failure case? And in this case, the function needs to return an error rather than. Expect that will pass. It looks like it passed. So now I've covered 2 more lines. So that 0.31 should drop to like 0.1, probably. The thing is, even that particular test case isn't very valuable because it's going to go away. Once I finish my conversion of the backend drivers, this old case will go away, and so will this, and then the old tests that had the failure would just kind of cover this for me anyway. But it's fine to add it. So I hope that answers the question. There's a little bit of rambling there. I don't pay much attention at all to test coverage. If it's 0, that's probably a bad thing. I will say one more thing about this though. Never write tests for the purpose of improving test coverage. That's the worst, silliest, I don't want to use bad words here, but most dangerous way to write tests. Write tests to improve your confidence in your code and your ability to deploy. If you have a manager who's paying you or demanding that you write tests just for coverage, find a new job. That's a really stupid way to write code and to write tests. You write bad tests that way. They make your code worse, or they make your tests worse. And what's worse, they add instability to your code. Code never breaks when it's not being changed, right? So if you have a project with 0% coverage that's running in production and it's working, that is better than getting that same project to 50% coverage because you're going to break things in the process. Writing tests necessarily means changing your code. Writing good tests, I should say, necessarily means changing your code to make it testable, and that will break things. So only write tests when you're touching the code anyway or when you need to improve it for the purpose of improving your confidence in the code, not for some made-up arbitrary percentage number. I'm going to stop rambling about that now. I hope that answered your question. Okay, I think I can I merge this now? No, I need to refresh. I'm waiting for my last commit to be tested. It's running now. While we're waiting, I'll talk about why this project still supports Go 1.17, and that's related to this right here. One of the reasons I wrote this driver in the first place was so that I could have the same Go API, whether I'm talking to CouchDB or PouchDB. PouchDB is a JavaScript implementation of CouchDB that runs in the browser. Now, if you want to run PouchDB with Go, that means you're compiling your Go into JavaScript, which I do with Gopher.js. Gopher.js supports Go 1.18 now, but without generics. So until it supports Go 1.18 with generics, I still build it for Go 1.17. Oh, great. So a comment. The same person who asked about test coverage says, you answered my question and answered my next question, which was how to deal with my manager and teammates who are concerned about high test coverage numbers. I now have a way to argue my case. I hope it's a good, I hope they will hear what you have to say. If you need more talking points or advice on how to respond, let me know. Send me an email. Find my contact details on boldlygo.tech. Be happy to try to help you there. So that's why I still support Go 1.17. It's because I need to support Gopher.js, which doesn't support generics yet. It's in progress. It has partial support for generics that hasn't been merged yet, but it's in progress. All right, that one takes the longest to execute because it has to install Node.js and install a bunch of dependencies, different things like that. Should be done soon. I would jump ahead to work on the backend driver, but I really need to have this merged so that I can do a dependency update on that first, and then I can continue. So sit here and wait for just a second. Should be done in a moment. Job succeeded. That's what I like to hear. Let's see if the test coverage dropped or improved as I expected. 0.8%. All right, so I did improve. That's pretty much close to what I predicted. So, all right, let's merge this thing. All right, now we can get back to the other repository. I'm going to copy this SHA here. So that I can paste it in here to fetch the latest version. Wait, am I in the right branch? Yes, I am. If you don't know LazyGit, you should check it out, unless you're a GUI Git user. It's a nice little text-based tool here to do some nice things. I just used it to switch the order of those commits. You see there, the whip and the update core Kivik dependency, I'm flipping them back and forth. Makes it nice and easy to do that sort of thing. So since I already merged that refactor I did, I'm going to rebase this thing again. So now we just have two commits in my current branch, the one to update the dependency I just did, and this work in progress one to make the necessary changes. So let's get back to work on that. I think this is the wrong, I'll close this one, I think. What's the other repo? Here, yeah, here we go. So now I'm going to change this to return driver.rows, which is going to make this freak out because that's doesn't implement that type. And neither does this. So I need to make this driver.document thing implement that type. I think that's possible. In fact, I was essentially doing the same thing in Kivik. I need to basically move that abstraction that takes a single document and treats it as a rows. I need to move that abstraction from Kivik, the core library, into backend implementation. But let's just get started here. So var underscore driver dot rows equals what? Why is it read only? Oh, because I'm in the wrong place, of course. Driver document is going to become obsolete. That's what that means. So, yeah. I'm going to copy this implementation here. Let me see. So that, I think I just jumped way ahead of myself there. So this driver.document type is just a struct in the driver package of the Kivik repo, the parent repo. Once I have all of my backend implementations using the rows result instead of the document result, this will go away. But I still want something similar to this to be implemented within the implementation here. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to unexport it. And then I'm going to make this implement the rows type. Now I expect this is failing. It doesn't implement those types. Yes, of course. So this is the interface I wanted to implement. So some of these methods are pretty easy to do because they need to do nothing. But let's get started here. I'll start with the easy ones. Total rows, int 64. Return nil, or return 0. Total rows is the total number of documents in our database view. We don't know the answer to that when you're requesting a single document. So 0 is the return value. Oh, it needs to be a method, not just a function. Offset. This is only useful when doing pagination. So it will be 0. Complete sequence is only useful when querying, well, it doesn't matter what. It's very specific things that are irrelevant here. So close we do want to implement. And next we want to implement. I'm going to do next first. So let me look at this row. This is interesting. I'm not returning the rev. I'm not sure this rev is actually going to be useful anymore, or if I need to extend this row to somehow expose that. But I'll worry about that in a minute. Let me try to get the current implementation working. So basically, I want to do 173. Yeah, oh, great question. I meant to talk about that. So the question is, what's happening here on line 173? So this is essentially a compile time assertion that the document type implements this interface. And the fact that it's a red squiggly means that it doesn't, because it doesn't yet. Oh, no, it does. Except that these functions are invalid. So let me just demonstrate that here. Let me comment out this next. So the red squiggly, if I hover over it, it says cannot use star document nil, value of type star document as driver.rows value and variable declaration because it does not implement that interface. So normally, let me break that down a little bit. I could say var rows driver.rows, and that defines that rows is of type driver.rows, right? I can also assign it a value at the same time. I could do this. Let's assume that document is valid, right? So this would be valid. Now, what if I want it to be the nil value of that? Then that's what this does. So in this case, var rows is of type driver.rows, and it equals the nil value of this struct. But now the compiler is complaining because I'm not using, it's actually complaining for a different reason, but let me put a different value here. So now it's going to complain that this is not used. Actually, it doesn't complain of that here because it's not in a function. But if I put it in a function, it should complain. Yeah, now it complains this is declared and not used, so I can use the underscore, and I still get the compile time checks that this variable, which is never used, of this type, can be assigned this value. So that's what it does. It's a compile time assertion that this struct implements this interface type. So I'm realizing that there's a conflict between these types. It's going to require some more work. So there are two features of this document that are not supported by the row implementation. One of them is returning the revision. And the other is returning an attachments iterator. The revision would be fairly easy to implement. I mean, I could just do this, for example. Maybe this. The problem is that no other implementation of the result set interface returns revisions. So it would be a feature for this one use case. Maybe that's worthwhile. Maybe I need to do that. I'm not sure. The attachments iterator is less clear how to handle that. CouchDB allows you to return attachments in one of two ways. By default, it returns them as base64 encoded values in an object, a hash map of file name : content, essentially. And that's what's happening over here. It's going to be part of either the value or the doc, depending on the type of query you're doing. However, you can, in some cases, have it return binary attachments, which is obviously much more efficient, and that's when this is used. Now, I have an issue on the issue tracker to add support for that for other query types, because CouchDB supports it. I just haven't implemented it yet. If I can find it. Oh, I thought I did. Maybe I'm not finding it. Anyway. If I want to maintain the same functionality I have now, I need to add support like this to the row, and more important, to the result set interface. Let me pull that up in the Google, not the Google Doc, the Go Doc. So here we have result set. So this is the public-facing API. This, if you joined me 2 weeks ago, this is what I was refactoring. So it does actually support attachments here. Does it support? And it reports the rev. Okay, so that's nice. I just don't know why it's not part of this row thing then. I'm quite curious. How does it get that? Let me look that up. So apparently I've already exposed that functionality, just not in a way that I'm remembering. So GitHub doesn't like zooming in that much, does it? All right, I'm going to have to pull this up in here. Okay, let's look this up here. So here's my result set as exposed to the user of the code. I want to see how it gets the rev. Underlying is of type basic result set. Remember doing that 2 weeks ago, but I don't remember. Okay, I think I know what's going on here. So, yeah. Something's wrong with my computer. No, I don't think I'm using this rows thing anymore. I think it's an old implementation that could probably go away. It's referenced a few places though. I'm confused. I'm at a loss here. Who wrote this stupid code? Oh yeah, I did. So returning rows here, but okay. The question is, I guess the question was, is row, right? Is that even being used? Yes, it's being used somewhere too. Where is that being used? That's where I just added the implementation. I'm so confused. I don't know where these other things are coming from. My own code has too many abstractions for my own brain to wrap around. Let me go back to my other investigation screen. Did I close that window? I think I did. What's this one? No, I'll just minimize it. Oh, here it is. It's returning a result set, which is populated by this rows I thing. And that is rows, right? Okay. So this new rows deal takes that's driver.rows, okay. And there's too many layers of abstraction here. I know that I need to, it's evolved over time. That's always how this stuff happens, right? Need to find a way to improve that. So here's where I'm calling rows.next, which is where the driver.row gets passed. But where my question was, where is the rev coming from? So here the rev is just nothing. That's fine. But where is it actually being used? So here in the old getter case, so here you can see that even though the driver get method was returning a single document, it was being converted to a result set. So this is where that abstraction that I mentioned is happening in the core library needs to happen in the backend driver. That's this. So we're returning result set. Underline R. Let's go. Okay, so I see how that's being done there. So basically, it was a special case in the core library. I need to move that special case to the backend somehow, I guess. I think that means I do need to extend that driver type to support those two fields. It's not a big deal. It's a little bit annoying, but I think I need to do that. So I need to extend this particular type to include I think that's all I need to do there. It feels like I'm polluting this interface, but the truth is I'm just moving some complexity from one place to another, so it's not really adding complexity, it's just moving it around. I don't know if that makes it a lot better, but it still feels kind of icky. All right, I'll let this run. Got about 10 minutes left, so obviously we're not going to finish this feature today. If anybody's still watching, are you enjoying this? Do you want to see me continue this next week? If not, I'll probably finish it up in my spare time before then and do something else next week. I'm thinking of going through another tutorial. I don't know which one yet. I have a few ideas in mind. I could also do an AMA, ask me anything. We could look at your code. We could review your code. If you're on and you have a suggestion, something you would find interesting, just let me know in chat before we end here in a few minutes. Otherwise, I'll think of something on my own to do next week. I've also been considering doing this twice a week, maybe on Fridays also. Fridays and Mondays are the days I have free time to do this. It would probably be the same time of day. So if you would be interested in joining either in addition, if you want to join me twice a week, or if maybe Fridays are better for you, let me know that too. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so we have one vote for continuing working on this next week. So I'll that's enough. I don't have a huge audience, so one vote counts for quite a bit. So I'll try to do that for next week. I think we're getting close. Well, actually, I don't know. I said I shouldn't say that. Doing the multi-part parsing might prove trickier than I expect, but the hard part here is getting the interfaces lined up properly, which we're nearly done with, I think. It's almost done. As always, Gopher.js is the slow one. Looks like I'm using an old version of Node.js. I should probably fix that and save 20 seconds on this slow run. Did it fail? No. Oh, I've had this intermittent failure. It seems to be a bug in Gopher.js or maybe in JavaScript that certain timing sensitive things don't work quite right. But if I rerun it, it seems to work. So there is a library that does the tricky part of the multi-part parsing. In fact, I think I'm using it already. Let me see. Yeah, so there's a multi-part new reader. I think it's part of the standard library. Yeah, MIME multi-part. So it should do the heavy lifting for me. It's a little bit annoying. I mean, not the library, but multi-part because you have to read it in order. That shouldn't be a big problem here because as far as I know, we can just read one part at a time as soon as it's read off the network and advance the iterator one step, one at a time. So if we get, my concern is if you query this and you get, say, 10 versions of a 2 megabyte file, that's 20 megabytes of data. You don't want to read that onto memory at once. You want to parse that in the smallest chunks possible. And what I really don't know is what will happen with attachments. If I have, I don't know what's going to happen with attachments. If I have, let's say I have, let's simplify with 2 versions of the document, version 1 and 2. And version 1 has a document, an attachment foo.jpg. And version 2 references the same attachment. I'm not sure how that's going to work exactly. Like, do I need to keep that first attachment in memory just in case the second iterator on the document reads it? I don't know. I'll have to figure this out. I probably won't figure all of it out for the first version. I'll probably get a basic version working, and then I can go back and fill in those gaps. But those are some of the complications that might come up. As far as just parsing the multi-part, that should be as fairly straightforward as calling this library. Did it fail again? Failed again twice this time. I need to get to the bottom of that. I wish the maintainers of Gopher.js would fix their crap. Oh, wait, I'm one of those maintainers. I want to get this one last thing merged. In fact, I'll probably just merge it. I know it works. I know that this particular failure is just an intermittent failure. And I have admin hammer privileges, so boom, it's done. Forget about that clicky test for now. All right, so let's do one last update here. Let's grab that SHA again or do another dependency update. All right, now let's see where we are. And now this is a little bit easier to do because I can assign those things as I want. So what I actually want to do, I don't want to use this document type. Well, maybe I do. I'll finish doing that and then I'll update. I'll refactor. So when we call next, I want to set row dot rev equals d dot rev, and row dot doc equals d dot body, and row dot attachments equals d dot attachments. Return nil. So okay, now I have a quote unquote functional iterator that every time you call next returns the same document, which obviously is not what we want. So we want to return the document once and then be done. So I think the easiest way to do that with this current structure is something like this. If d equals nil, return io.eof. Pretty sure that's the right approach. Yes. This EOQ is obsolete. I need to update that GoDoc. But next we return io.eof when there are no more rows. So if d is nil, we return io.eof. And then here we're going to set d equals nil. I think that'll work. And then if we call close, then it sets d equals nil, and return nil. I'm not 100% sure if you can set that to nil. I'm trying to think of a quick way to test that. The playground for the win, right? Type foo struct id string func foo set nil f equals nil. Yeah, that doesn't work. That's what I thought. So I need to do this differently. I need to do something like this. Will this work? Therefore, nil type foo. Why did that first one fail? Cannot use blah value type before the foo as do, not make. There, that works. So I can update my code to do this. It's kind of ugly, and this is not going to be the way I do it permanently, but new d equals new document d equals new d. And I'll copy the same logic here. Actually, I'm gonna only do it one place, and I'll do this. A little bit of DRY there. All right, so now I have a functional iterator. It's an ugly one, but it should work. I don't know if I have tests that are actually going to work on this. What? Driver.rows. What did I do wrong? Oh, yeah, okay. So this code is still expecting. Yeah, I need to make a lot of changes here. So there's a lot of work to be done here. But I think the iterator works. I don't know if my whip. Let's call it a day. Yeah, that might work. Let me try that. Where did I put it? This is right in the playground. It's easier to test. Yeah, that works. It's easier. Thanks. Ah, too many windows and too many screens. There we go. All right, so we're going to call it a day. We'll pick this up again in a week. Hopefully, I will remember at least a little bit about what I was trying to do. We'll keep going. So thanks for joining me today. Hope to see you next week. Have a good week.